Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger of the Dragons Insider, blogger of Inside the OAA, and one of the hosts tweeting to me on OAA Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on a local voice on SoundCloud and those watching on YouTube. We got a lot to talk about this week. Obviously, it's been a heck of a week around the league. Obviously, of course, we've had a new football coach at Pontiac. We're going to talk about that shortly. Also, the sudden shocking departures at Clarkston and Rochester Adams, and also the recap of some spring sports that have gone on this past week. So a lot of impressive things going around the OA this week here on the it's the we got to address. So let's go to our main story. Obviously, in football, this came out of nowhere. Pontiac has a new football coach. Ken Wade was named the new head coach of the Phoenix, taking over for Charles White at Pontiac. And when you look at Pontiac, this has been a team program that has been just really, really bad. This team's been really, really bad. Not being media. When you look at the records, 5-73 since 2012. That pretty much tells the whole story. But when you look at Wade, he's well known in the youth football programs. He worked under former North Farmington coach and new coach at Waterford Kettering, Bob Chiazza. So he's pretty much well known in the community at Pontiac. So when you really look at this hire, Pontiac football has been just really, really decimated. This team, not being mean to you, I'm looking at it from a program strength. This team's been, not being mean, this team really hasn't been competitive. And the numbers say it. Obviously, Wade, with Wade, I think he could, with Wade, I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Pontiac. But when I'm looking at that schedule that Pontiac has this year, playing in the blue, they gotta play. You gotta play, obviously Bloomfield Hills, Farmington, and Berkeley and Avondale. Those are your four top teams in the blue this year. And then you gotta play Troy Athens, Troy, Royal Oak, and then you close out, and then you have to play Stockbridge. So that's a really difficult schedule for Pontiac. When you're trying to say, okay, I'm trying to rebuild a program at Pontiac, and you look at the situation that Pontiac's in. I look at it with them in two ways. The first way here is, you got to go into maximum overdrive, you know what I mean? Basically with your program. And, but you got to be competitive in these games. That's the problem with Pontiac. It's been the fact that they've not been competitive. They've been getting blown out, week after week, and it's got no point. It's sad. But, hopefully with Wade, what he'll do is, he'll give him some confidence and some energy. You know what I mean? Now, what helps Pontiac is they got experience coming back, obviously. And, when you look at the strength of their team is going to be their line. The line play is going to be the strength of Pontiac. Obviously, they got some very good players up front, led, of course, by Latirius Black, Keanu Humphrey, Tavion Etchen, and Marco Gonzalez. They're going to be your key players this year, especially up front. And then, of course, you have a very good tight end in Taekwon Ringgold, and, of course, your wide receiver in Damian Logan. And then your running back slots to be all right with Daquan Logan there, and then you have and then you have Charles White Jr., your returning quarterback. So when you look at Pontiac, they've got some talent back. They got some players back for Wade. But when you look at the record the past, you know what I mean? Everything that's gone on, and say to yourself, could a this would be a very interesting move, you know what I mean, to say in all least for Pontiac, but it's a start. But the question for me is, for Pontiac is, do you move do you basically start from scratch again? Or do you just basically say, okay, let's go to maximum overdrive and basically see what happens? And I would say, in my opinion, I think, for a program that has suffered so much, like this team has, like this program has, to find that right spot for them, it makes a lot of sense for them to just basically take that route, And when I looked at the Twitter page, and looked at Wade, the new guy, I said to myself, okay, I mean, like, we'll see what happens. Um, but this move came out of nowhere. I didn't expect I did not know that Charles White Sr., their former coach, I mean, like, he stepped down. I did not know that, and Pontiac Athletic Director Lee Montgomery, posted on Twitter about the welcoming Ken Wade into Pontiac, and Wade's gonna have a lot of work to do with that program, though. He's got to build program strength. That's the thing that Pontiac, they only have one team. They only have one team. I mean, when you really look at Pontiac, I mean, like, this situation is, they've got to. I know they've got a lot of kids playing trial by fire, and sometimes it's really dangerous. But when you really look at Pontiac, I mean, that's what they're forced to do right now because they just don't have the numbers. And I think, but Pontiac is an improving community. When you really look at the facilities they have there, I mean, like, the key for me is you got to start at the lower levels. And and I talked about this a couple years ago with Coach Doug Corliss when he was here on our podcast. He said that it's got to start from the bottom up. And with Pontiac, the thing is, you've got to keep those kids in in your school district. I mean, like, you got a lot of kids from Pontiac that are going elsewhere, just to play, but if you're Pontiac, I mean, like, you look at the success of your basketball program. I mean, your boys basketball program. Um, your boys basketball program was in the gold race all year long. I mean, like, I mean, they were very good. They were good this year under Coach Damon O'Neill. I mean, for football, football and basketball, yes, they're two different sports. I get it. But when you look at the situation, how it's unfolded, um, and you look at okay, we got a new coach, we got another new voice, you know what I mean? Sometimes, you need that stability. In Pontiac, they need stability, You need to have a guy that's there long term, you know what I mean? I mean, they have not been the same program since Brad Zuby left Pontiac, and it's really unfortunate. But that's the thing you got to look at with Pontiac is long term stability, and then of course 5-73 since 2012. That's not good. I mean, but that's the facts right now. You know what I mean? This program has not been able to win a lot of games. I mean, like, they've only won 5 games, and you know, and you know, I know a lot of people at Pontiac are hoping that Ken Wade can be that guy to turn the program around. I mean, like, and I think, we'll see what happens. But for Pontiac, the thing of the matter is, and I think Wade's got to answer this question himself. Do I start over, or do I go into maximum overdrive, hope to see what happens? Because you have an experienced team that, could get you some wins. I mean, like, obviously, but the schedule is really difficult, obviously, when you're playing that type of schedule, and then you got to play, then you got Stockbridge on that schedule as well. I mean, but Wade's got 2 decisions to make, you know what I mean, with this program. It's either start over or go maximum overdrive. That's the big question I have with Pontiac. You got experience back, but we don't know how this is going to happen. I mean, there's going to have to be a transition period that has to take place. And I know a lot of people in Pontiac are sick and tired of hearing that word transition period. It has to happen during the season. I mean, it happens to every good team. I mean, like when you have a new coach in there. So that's the thing that I'm looking at with Pontiac. Um, when you look at the Phoenix, this situation really, I mean, like, we're gonna see what happens. I mean, like, obviously with Pontiac, I mean, I am very personally for me, I'm very curious to see how Ken Wade's gonna do at Pontiac. Um, when you look at, of course, the youth football experience, but I just there's just too many questions when I look at Pontiac. There's just way too many questions. So that's my thoughts on Pontiac. And I know there's a lot of excitement around the community there surrounding the Ken Wade hire. And but the thing is I'm hoping, you know what I mean, that this is the right fit. I'm hoping that the stability factor, will be there for Pontiac. I just think that I'm hoping he's there long term. And, if you want to put together a program, you know what I mean, you got to be there long term. And I'm hoping that he's there long term. And we'll see what happens. Like we'll see what happens. I mean, like to build a program, you got to be there. You gotta put your identity in. You look at all the successful teams in the league, obviously, that's been very successful. They've had coaches that have been there long term, programs have been in there long term. Pontiac's no different. I mean, you gotta have a guy that's in there. You know what I mean? They're long term. And you gotta work with what you got. And and I think Pontiac will do that. I think Wade will do that. I think he'll be there long term. We'll see what happens. I mean, like, but there's a lot of work to do at Pontiac. But Wade's got two decisions to make. Either start over from scratch again, or go to maximum overdrive and say, you know what, let's win games with this group. I mean, for Pontiac, you can't be everybody's. Like a lot of people view Pontiac football as okay, it's an easy win. It's an easy win. Now, what changes that would be the amount of mindset, obviously, and say, okay, let's go in here and say, you know what I mean? We're 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 sick and tired. I mean, like of being everybody's. We're sick and tired of it. I mean, like I know we can't change our record in the past. We can't, but we can do something this season. We can do something this season. If Pontiac wins at least 3 or 4 games, and I'm looking at that schedule, and I know there's 2 winnable games on that schedule for them. And I think, it'll be a start for Pontiac football. I mean, like they've got it. I mean, like I think it's a start for them. But they got a chance to feel what the playoffs were like last year. Unfortunately, they ran into Bay City Western, who was a really good team in Division 3. So when you look at Pontiac, I mean, so I'll be curious to see what happens. This one's going to be really interesting. So we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of, when you look at Wade, hoping for a fresh start there. Wade's going to have two decisions to make, obviously. Um, but I'm curious to see. But what helps Pontiac, they got experience. They got they've got experience. They got a quarterback in Charles White. Their strength is up front. The only downsides that I have are their depth and program strength. That's the only two concerns I have surrounding Pontiac. When you look at the hire of Ken Wade. So we'll see what Wade does in his first year at Pontiac, taking over the Phoenix. So we'll see what happens there going forward there. Let's go now from Pontiac football to we got 2 coaches that have stepped down in girls basketball. Obviously the what happened at Clarkston. John Wire stepped down this past week, and also Shade Lewis after our show last week stepped down at Rochester Adams. And we're gonna go with Wire first. Of course, he stepped down on Thursday. This came out of complete nowhere. I mean, this was a huge shock. Clarkston coach John Wire confirmed on Twitter and Facebook that he was stepping down. He wrote a letter um to the Clarkston family. Of course, he thanked them. Jeff Cozen, the athletic director of Clarkston, he thanked the athletes for being there. He was there 3 years, and Clarkston was very good in his 3 years. I mean, like, even though early on in his tenure they struggled early, but I understood that because of the transition from Christine Rogers to John Wire. I mean, like, that was a really difficult transition, going from one direction to another. It could be really difficult for anybody. I mean, and Wire's first year, it was very difficult, and then they started to turn things around in the middle to the end of the year, and they ended up having a better record. Unfortunately, they ran into a very good Waterford Kettering team in the district semifinals, but then the last 2 years, Clarkston has been really competitive. With the experience factor. And they ended up winning two district titles, getting to the regional semifinals in each season. Of course, it didn't end out always in the regionals. 2 years ago, they fell to Walled Lake Western, and then last year they fell to, and then this year they fell to Birmingham Marion. So when you really look at Clarkston under Wire, it's been really, really good. Especially, a lot of the kids he had, of course, played on his AU Pride team. So when you look at Clarkston heading into the future, you say to yourself, okay, what next for this team? I mean, they, with Wire stepping down, what next? I mean, you do have a very good team coming back. I mean, led by Maddie Sikorsky and Izzy Haley. I mean, those are two very good players coming back. Just a lot of questions when you look at Clarkston. Obviously I will be curious to see if they go in house or outside the box. It's looking more and more likely that they're gonna go more outside the box. Could it be so I'm curious to see where athletic director Jeff Cozen goes with Clarkston with the girls program. Do you possibly go and get a short-term coach, or do you go get a long-term coach? I would think the best fit would be a long-term coach, but I'm gonna be curious to see where Clarkson goes with this hire. This is a good job. Obviously, you got a ton of program strength. Now the question is, what Clarkson's gonna be is this a situation where, you know, do you look at the possibility of bringing back a Christine Rogers? Do you look at the possibility of going outside the box, maybe going finding a proven winner, or maybe going to find a proven coach where they've had success, or finding an assistant, you know what I mean, who's a really really good coach. I mean, like, so I don't so if you're Clarkson athletic director Jeff Cozen, you got options. Um, Obviously you got some really good options. When you look at the Wolves situation, how it's unfolded there. So when you look at Clarkston, it's a really good job. I mean, you got a really good community there. I mean, really good school district. It's a really big school. But I'm curious to see how the adjustment will be. And you're going to be in the red division when you're going up against the likes of West Bloomfield, Groves, Royal Oak. You look at like, got Southfield Arts and Tech as well. So it's going to be really, really difficult sledding. Whoever gets the job at Clarkson. Like I said, there's going to be an adjustment period as well. I mean, like, do I think is there going to be a culture shock? I don't know. I mean, like, it depends who the right person is for this job. But I did talk to Jeff Cozen, the athletic director at Clarkston. We did talk about how the program was going to be, how everything was going. It's going to be it's going to be a very difficult search. I'm curious to see how the summer ball is going to look, how the everything's going to look. Clarkston's got a good team coming back next year, and I think and I know a lot of people know that. But I'm just curious to see who's going to be the guy there at Clarkston or the girl there at Clarkston. Who's that person going to be? That I'm curious to see where that goes there. Let's go to another job opening. Of course, it's at Adams. Shay Lewis stepped down after our podcast last week. Heard about that. And this one to me was kind of a what the wire resignation at Clarkston was a shock to me because, but I also understood why he stepped down, and it was because of his work commitments. And I understand that. You know what I mean? I understand that. The work commitments, having a job, you know what I mean? Like it's not easy. It's not easy when you have a job and you're putting the time in for basketball. You know what I mean? It's not it's a grueling take, especially on your family as well. So I understand, you know, what's going on, but I just feel I'm really happy for Wire, you know what I mean? I wish him the best of luck, you know what I mean? But I think he's gonna do well, you know what I mean? He's gonna do really, really well. Let's go to the Adams situation. Of course, Adams will have a new coach next winter as well. Shea Lewis stepped down. Um, and I knew there were some sticking points, obviously, when you look at the Adams situation. Of course, this team went to district finals twice, ran into Clarkston. And then last 3 years, and then of course they lost to Waterford Kettering in the district final as well. But anytime you lose three players like what Adams is going to lose, and Maddie Delinga, Elizabeth Blaine and Lauren Petersmark, that's a huge loss, obviously, for Adams. And when you look at the program strength coming up at Adams, it really the program strength to me is the one that's a sticking point to me. But when you look at Lewis as well, she also coaches college basketball, coaches at Schoolcraft College. And when you look at the situation there, and Adams, under Lewis, they were 57-39. There was 1 year that Lewis missed, and Jackie Steinecker coached that team for one season. So when you really look at Adams, this year they went 5-5 and 1-3 in the white this year. They were in the conversation for the white title, but lost to Stony Creek on a buzzer beater by Milana Sorch. When you look at Adams, I knew there were hints that she would step down. And then when you look at the future of Adams, they do got some players coming back. When you look at Maddie Kessman, you got Anaya Howard, Elizabeth Blaine, and Abby Dranick. So if you're Adams' athletic director, Brian Hasler, who came into the program, he's gonna have his hands full. But what helps him here, I know he's got connections to when he was at Madison Heights Bishop Foley. So I'm curious to see where he goes with this new coach. So could Adams go in house? That's a question. When you look at the jobs with Adams and Clarkston, I'm gonna compare contrast them a little bit. But when you look at Adams, obviously losing a Delinga, losing a Petersmark, and losing a Blaine, that's gonna hurt. That'll certainly hurt Adams going forward. But I know that their future. I know they got Kessman, they got Sam Blaine coming back, and they got Abby Dranick also coming back as well. So when you look at Adams, that situation, how that unfolded, I knew there were some things behind the scenes. I knew that, but either way, Adams to me, is probably going to be the team that's going to go through a huge culture shock. And when I mean that, it's going to be a whole different direction. I mean, like, I'm going to look at a perfect example as Adams' boys team. You look at the boys program before Jared Thomas got there under Coach Brad Crichton. It was a mess. It was a complete mess. And now you're bringing in, and then you bring in Jared Thomas, you know, a fresh breath of fresh air. You know what I mean? And look what Adams has been. They've been in the district final. They got a very good team coming back next year. Program strength's on the rise there. And could it work in the girls program at Adams? Maybe. I mean, but what hurt them was Adams did not field the freshman team. And that's really unfortunate because Adams' freshman team, was if because Adams is a big school. We know Adams is a really big school. There's a lot of kids that could come out of Van Heusen, that could come out of West, that go to Adams, and play basketball. You know what I mean? So I was shocked that Adams did not have a freshman program this season. I mean, and I get it's a COVID year, I get it. But I was really, really shocked that Adams did not field the freshman program. I mean, that pretty much, to me, it looked very similar to the boys program. You know what I mean? When I remember when Brad Crichton had to coach both teams. I remember that. I mean, so it kind of had some similarities. But either way, for Adams, next year for them, it's going to be a complete culture shock. So when you look at Clarkston and Adams, their jobs, their coaching gigs. I mean, obviously, when you look at Adams, you're gonna go through you're gonna have to change the culture at Adams. I mean, because of based on program strength, based on talent alone. I mean, so I'm curious to see who's gonna get the job there at Adams. So I'm curious to see that. At Clarkston, I don't think you have to change the culture there. I just don't. I mean, I'm curious to see where that job goes. I mean, who is going to be the guy or the girl that gets that job at Clarkston? I mean, Christine Rogers before John Wire came in and did a wonderful job there. John Wire did a phenomenal job at Clarkston. Basically getting him to that next level. He was a very good coach at Clarkston. Same thing with Shay Lewis at Adams. I mean, she did a really good job getting that program there at Adams, getting them to be where they're at. So when you look at the jobs that both these two coaches have done, I mean, it was a phenomenal job both of them did. So I'm curious to see who the new coaches will be. Will both teams go in-house or will both teams have to go outside the box? I think more and more likely on both cases that they're going to have to go outside the box. And I think it'll be really interesting to see who gets the job at Adams and Clarkston. It'd be really interesting to see who gets their jobs. I mean, gets the jobs. I mean, so we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens going forward. But this is a situation we're going to be keeping a very close eye on is the jobs at Adams and also at Clarkston. So we're going to see what happens going forward. Let's look at the spring sports now. Obviously, we've had a lot of spring sports to talk about. Some teams that have really got my attention. Groves is a team that's really got my attention a little bit in baseball. I mean, they're out to an 11-1 start. They're playing really good baseball. West Bloomfield is another team that I've been really high on as well. I mean, Stony Creek is probably the team that I think the most interesting is Stony Creek because when you look at the Cougars, I read the recent the recent MHA rankings, and they checked in at number 15 this week in the state rankings. So when you look at Stony Creek, I mean, I didn't think that they would be ranked that high. I mean, Stony Creek's off to a really good start. Lake Orion's off to a good start. Um, as well. I think the Dragons have been rolling lately. Also, Oxford. Oxford, despite their non-conference schedule, um, when you look at Oxford, I mean, like if they can, I know the schedule's going to get tough when they go in the late April and the early May. Once the postseason starts, of course, that's going to be really interesting to say the least. So when you really look at it, I just think that I really think that Oxford, Lake Orion, they're going to be fine. I think both teams are going to be fine heading in the postseason. Adams, I think, is going to be okay with Parker Pico. He's had a really good year for Adams thus far. So that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there on that department. And then you look at North Farmington, of course, a big player coming back for them is Ryan Shelby. He was on a 14-day quarantine. So when you look at North Farmington, I think they're going to start taking off. I expect the Raiders to be a team that could very well take off. And so when I look at my top 5 this week in the poll, of course, I do my updates. I did an update early this morning. Of course, we're filming on Mondays. So I updated my rankings. I said West Bloomfield's still my top team. Stony Creek's my number 2 ranked team, of course. And then North Farmington's my 3rd ranked team. Lake Orion's my 4th ranked team. Oxford's my 5th ranked team. And Groves tied with Oxford and Groves in the baseball ranks. So that's my thoughts on baseball right now. But I'm curious to see how the division races are going to break out. How the red's going to play out. The white, the blue, and the gold. Curious to see how it's going to go. I mean, so we'll see what happens going forward there. Let's go to the world of softball. And softball, to me, this has been probably the hardest season to figure out. I mean, you look at one day Clarkston's playing well, and then they struggle. And then one day Lake Orion's playing well, they're struggling. And then you look at Stony Creek, they're playing well, then one day they're struggling. I mean, it's really, really crazy. I mean, you look at softball, I mean, like, it's, you know, there's really no clear cut favorite in softball in the OAA right now. I mean, like, I thought it would be Clarkston one week. I thought it'd be Stony Creek. Then I thought it'd be Lake Orion. And then I thought it would be Bloomfield Hills. I mean, like, then one week I thought it'd be Groves. I thought it'd be Seaholm. I mean, obviously. But when I look at teams right now who I think have been playing really well, Bloomfield Hills is one of those teams that I'm keeping a close eye on. This is a very young team that they have there. Um, they're they're playing at a high expectation level. They just knocked off a very good Groves team the other day. So that's a team I'm keeping a close eye on is Bloomfield Hills. I mean, the way they've been playing. Um, Clarkson's another team. I mean, obviously, when you look at, of course, that was the team I really felt that was most impacted by COVID was Clarkston because they had a really good team coming back. I mean, a lot of experience. And then like that last year, I mean, the whole season being wiped out. I mean, Clarkson's a team that I think, was the team that got ripped off the most. And I felt real bad for their class of 2020. So when you look at Clarkston, obviously, this team really has, they're young, it's going to take an adjustment period for them. I know Kira Tomey's a good player. I think the younger Katie's on that team at Clarkston. But and then you look at Stony Creek, obviously, they've been starting to roll as of late. I mean, like Adams, I know what Franz Wojcik has done over there. He's also a longtime girls basketball coach at Adams as well. So, but for Adams, really, the softball team's been playing on and off. I mean, like Elizabeth Blaine is on that team. Obviously, I mean, like, so that's very interesting to see what happens there with Adams. So that is a team that I'm keeping a close eye on. And then Ferndale. Ferndale's another one because Ferndale down there, they've been playing good softball. It wouldn't surprise me if they're favored in their district, even though I think they went up to Division 1 for the postseason. So So I'm curious to see what happens there. But Ferndale's another team I'm watching very carefully as well. So we'll see what happens there in the softball ranks. Um, let's go to track and field. Of course, this one here is really interesting. Of course, we had the Oxford Invitational this weekend. We had the Milford relays this past weekend. Those are the two relays I really want to recap. You know what I mean? When you look at the teams that were there, I got to give Ben Haas a lot of credit at Clarkston. He broke the invitational record. He threw a 55 feet. 55 feet. And I looked at his form and everything, and it was really good. I mean, it was really, really good. So when I look at Ben Haas, I mean at Clarkston, I mean I gotta give him big time props. He broke the record there at Milford. I've got to give him big time props there. There were several teams that were there. I gotta give when you look at the teams there, Rochester was there. I know Clarkston was there. West Bloomfield was there. Um, those are the teams I do remember that were there. And then of course the Oxford Invitational. Obviously, you had Oxford, Lake Orion, Bloomfield Hills, Farmington, and Avondale. All of them were there. Of course, the boys was won by Lake Orion. The girls was won by Oxford. Um, when you look at how the division races are going to play out, and when you look at the gold right now, I still think the gold right now is Oak Park's to lose. The way that they've been playing. Now they haven't had a meet yet, so I'll be curious to see what happens with Oak Park. But you know how talented they are. We all know how talented they are, and both their boys and girls programs. I mean, they have a machine down there at Oak Park, and I'm curious to see what happens there. The Blues probably going to be. I'm going to really enjoy this division, and the reason why I say this is because you got some really good teams down there. You got Farmington, you got Groves, Seaholm, West Bloomfield. I mean, this is a really, really good division. When you look at Farmington, I saw them Saturday. I thought they had a nice showing. At Oxford, they had a really good showing. I really think that but I really think with Farmington, of course, the play of their thrower. The throwers. Val Pallett is the real deal. She threw 41. At Oxford. But it'd be interesting to see how they do in the regionals or in the league meets. So when you look at Farmington, this is a team that I think could win this division. Obviously, not only in the dual meet schedule, but also in the regulars in the regionals as well. So when you look at Farmington, that is a really good team there. And Groves is another one. Groves is the way that Groves has been playing. I really like how they've been playing. When you look at the Falcons, they got balance. Especially in the boys. Farmington boys Groves boys have been playing really well. And then of course you look at Seaholm. The girls obviously with Audrey DiMaggio. She's been running lights out for Seaholm. So I'm curious to see what happens going forward there. And then you look at, of course, North Farmington's a team that they could do some damage. And then you have West Bloomfield. West Bloomfield, we know they have athletes, obviously. So when you look at the Lakers, we know what they have. So that blue division in the OAA this year in track and field, especially in the boys, is really, really, really tough. So when you look at it here, it's really interesting to see what happens there in that division. In the white division, obviously, you got Stony Creek, Bloomfield Hills, Troy, Athens, Avondale, and Pontiac. And I think Pontiac's in that division. Pontiac's either in the gold or they're in the white. So when you look at Pontiac, when you look at and Bloomfield Hills, I was impressed with some of the runners. They had some really good runners. I mean, their relays are not bad. I mean, like, when you look at it. But I still think in the girls' side of things, the best team in that division is Troy. I just think the Colts a little bit more balanced. I mean, like, I just think Troy's been playing really well there. And then on the boys' side of things, I looked at Bloomfield Hills. They had some good runners as well. I mean, like, they had some good runners at Oxford. They had some good and then of course West Bloomfield, I thought they looked really good at Milford. Now that at now at a Milford, it was a boy girl invite. You know what I mean? So basically, like, it was basically the guys and the girls were running together. You know what I mean? Whereas it's a different type of different type of system, how that was ran out at Milford compared to the Oxford Invitational. You know what I mean? Where it was ran basically on an invitational format. So when you look at, and then of course there's that red division. You still got, I still think, in my opinion, Adams is the team to beat in that division. I just think Adams, and it's both boys and girls. And when you look at Adams under Coach Eric Lohr, they got their big wins against Lake Orion, Clarkston. And then when you look at Adams, I mean, they're balanced. They got balance on them. Sprints, distance, field events, you name it, they got balance. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Adams is in that conversation to win the regional. It would not surprise me if they're in that conversation. I mean, that's how good Adams is this year. So when you look at Adams, I mean, obviously, this team, the way that they're playing, I mean, like, they're playing lights out right now. And Adams is a team that they're going to be dangerous. I mean, this is a really dangerous team when you look at Adams. I just think that but then you got to look at Lake Orion. Obviously, with them, I mean, the Dragons are a team that I mean, like, they've started to put things together, particularly in the field events. They're starting to put things together, especially in the sprints as well. This is still a young group, so when you look at Lake Orion, I mean, like, they're starting to get it. You know what I mean? They're starting to turn things around a little bit. The Adams loss, kind of a wake up call for them in the boys. The girls, they had a good finish at Oxford. They took second. Of course, everything starts with Soapy Novak. For the Dragons, I mean, everything really does. But they've gotten some runners. I mean, like, they've gotten some. But I'm curious to see what happens with this Lake Orion girls team. Oxford's probably the girls team I was really impressed with. They got sprints, they got distance. The throws, of course, will be led, of course, by Ariana Hubbard. I mean, like, she's been around a consistent 32, 33. So I'm curious to see what happens with Oxford, if they're gonna have a I think the problem is in the field events with Oxford is they got to develop a supporting cast, particularly in the throws for Hubbard and the girls' side of things. Um, and then you look at obviously and then you got to look at they got enough depth. I mean, like, to do some damage. And I also think what helps is pole vault scoring too. The pole vault scoring. They do count in league play. They don't count pole vault, but in regionals or I think in the league meet they do count pole vault. I'm not sure. I gotta talk to my co-host Ian Locke on that. If they do count pole vault. But especially, when you look at teams like the pole vault powers, obviously Lake Orion, Oxford are definitely pole vault powers. So I'm curious to see what happens there. And then of course Rochester, the way they played at Milford, they looked all right. I mean, like, we'll see what they have going forward. And then of course Oxford's boys, they were second place in the Invitational at Oxford behind Lake Orion, and they're getting better. I mean, Oxford's a team that's getting better. It's gonna take a little bit for them to it's gonna take a little bit for them, with the adjustments, but it's everything in track and field. You know what I mean? It's gonna take a little bit. You know what I mean? Especially when you miss a year like that, especially with the COVID situation, how that's unfolded. So those are my thoughts right now on track and field on both boys and girls. Let's go to lacrosse. Obviously, my top 5 teams in both boys and girls. Oak Park's my top team in the boys. Adams number 2, Lake Orion number 3, Farmington number 4, Clarkston number 5. In the girls' side, I got Oak Park my number 1, Seaholm number 2, Adams number 3, Troy number 4, and Oxford number 5. Let's go to girls soccer. Stony Creek, Adams, and Rochester. They've been playing really well. Athens has been up and down. So has been Troy. But Lake Orion's been a team that's really been a surprise. Like the Dragons, a lot of experience. Of course, you have Casey Lauer, Bridget Finneran. They've got others as well that can fill that role for Coach Chris Korteg. Big win against Oxford for them last week, so that was a huge win for them over Oxford in the snow. Mackenzie Metner has been carrying Oxford most of the season long, so for if you're Lake Orion, that's a huge win to get on Oxford. And I think right now, if I had to put anybody in that white race right now, I'd say Lake Orion right now would have an edge in that race right now in the white division. My top 5 teams, really not much to change on. Stony Creek's still my top team. Rochester's my number 2 team. Adams is my 3rd ranked team. Lake Orion number 4, Oxford number 5. Let's go to lacrosse. When you look at lacrosse, obviously, some of these teams are starting to struggle a little bit. Lake Orion's been struggling a little bit. They played a very good Orchard Lake St. Mary's team, so might as well give them a pass. But they've been up and down a little bit. That's a little bit of a concern. Not sure if Cade Mansell's back or not yet for the Dragons, but be curious to see. That's a team I'm keeping a close eye on. Birmingham United had a really tough loss the other night. But still, when I look at Birmingham United, they're my top team right now. And then you look at Clarkston, the way they've been playing. Then Bloomfield Hills is really starting to get better. And then, of course, Adams. So my top 5 in boys lacrosse, Birmingham United, Lake Orion, Clarkston, Bloomfield Hills, and Adams. Really no changes to the ranks in that one. Girls lacrosse, my top team still Birmingham United, the way they've been playing. Bloomfield Hills, they've been dominant as well. Those are your two top those are your 2 top teams right now in girls lacrosse. Clarkson's my number 3 team right now. Athens, my number 4, and then Lake Orion's my number 5. So when you really look at the top teams right now in this league, it's still Birmingham United and Bloomfield Hills. It's theirs to lose. So when you really look at those 2 teams, those are going to be really the teams that you're keeping a really good eye on, close eye on, obviously. You got to look at it from that perspective. And then you look at, of course, I think in the boys side of things, you got to look at the play of Clarkston. They're starting to turn around a little bit. Oakland County, and then another team I didn't mention here was Adams. Adams is a team that has to be watched in boys lacrosse as well. So when you really look at boys lacrosse, obviously that's the thing you got to keep an eye on. And then the girls side of things, until you knock off Birmingham United or Bloomfield Hills, those are the 2 teams for sure that are your 2 top teams in boys lacrosse. Let's go to tennis. Obviously I didn't put my top 5 in there for tennis. I like to play Bloomfield Hills. They've been playing pretty well lately. Clarkston, we know what they have. Seaholm, we know what they have. So I'm curious to see how tennis is going to look, especially when the postseason begins. I think they're the first postseason tournament to begin. So I'm curious to see where that goes. So that'll be very interesting to see what happens there. But I still think Clarkston's going to be a very tough team to beat. Adams is another one to look at as well. So I'm curious to see how they're being played out right now. And then, of course, water polo, they started, I believe, their district tournament this week. I'm not sure what's been going on around the ranks of water polo world. So it is what it is, but we'll see what happens. And then let's go to golf. Obviously, of course, I've really been impressed with the play of Bloomfield Hills and Rochester Adams. I mean, they've been playing really good golf. I mean, like that's something that to keep an eye on for sure. Heading into the regionals is the how but until you beat, but you got to look at obviously Lake Orion's still the team to beat. I mean, they were state champions back in 2019. Um, so I'm curious to see what the Dragons have to go along with the play of Bloomfield Hills and Adams. Those are your, I think, the two top teams in golf right now. But then Clarkston's another one. I think Clarkston is another team to keep an eye on for sure going forward. When you look at the golf ranks. So, so my thoughts on the past week, I mean, really, I'm curious to see how everything goes. We're in the middle of spring sports, which is really good. I mean, at least everybody's going at it healthy, you know what I mean? Like we're holding our own here. I mean, like, and we'll see what happens going forward. Obviously, when you look at some of the teams that I was really impressed with at the Oxford Invitational this past weekend, I mean, like, Oxford girls track obviously has been really impressive. I was really impressed with them. I mean, but I was down in the throws area, and of course, Byron's got this really good thrower. And the name just doesn't go in the tip of my thumb, but she threw an incredible 47-9. I mean, the girl from Byron. I know her first name was Sarah. So but she threw an incredible 47-9, and that to me is her form's down, everything. I mean, like, what do you say? I mean, obviously, what do you say? I mean, and then you look at of course, Val Pallet at Farmington had a really nice day as well through that 41. She's going to be a key player for Farmington going forward. If they want to do well, especially in that regional. Um, so and Farmington's got one of the best throws teams in the entire state. I mean, well coached, well disciplined. So I really like where Farmington's at. Um, Lake Orion's a young girls team, but boys team is pretty good. And then you look at Oxford, of course, we mentioned earlier with Hubbard. Obviously, question is, can she get the help? That's the big question for Oxford. Their boys team has really gotten better. They rely a lot on each other. Oxford and Lake Orion are pretty much the same when you look at both teams, obviously. Um, I mean, you don't really have that true stud, but you have like a true 1, 2, 3, and that says a lot, obviously, when you have that type of talent there. And then of course you look at a team like Clarkston. We know how good the girls are, their distance are. Um, and then of course you have and then the throws. You got Ben Haas and the boys. Their jumps are pretty good. I mean, they're balanced. I mean, so when you look at Clarkston, I mean, they're a very solid team. They were at Milford this weekend. Also, Rochester was there as well, and they look all right. Rochester looks good. West Bloomfield was also there. They looked pretty good as well. So when you look at OA track and field, the teams to beat. I mean, like, there's a lot of good talent out there. To be honest with you, I'm really, really glad that spring sports is back. Back with the it's back. You know what I mean? Like and let's keep it this way. I mean, like I said to everyone, just got to mask up. You know what I mean? And stay safe. I mean, obviously that's the bottom line when you really look at the situation, how it's unfolded. Surrounding the ranks of track. We've covered, of course, this week here. We talked about the West Bloomfield. I mean, we talked about the hire at Pontiac, obviously, with Ken Wade. So that one's I'm curious to see how that's gonna go over there at Pontiac. With the higher weight. I mean, like I mentioned earlier in the pod, I said they got two directions for Pontiac. It's either start over or go up, or go into maximum overdrive, and I think that's the big question for Pontiac. And then you look at, of course, the why we're keeping an eye on the girls basketball coaching situations at Adams and Clarkston. So those are the two big ones here to keep an eye on really, really carefully. And then, of course, we got a lot of spring sports going around. Of course, obviously, baseball, softball, track and field, tennis, lacrosse, um, and then, of course, the you got golf as well. I mean, like, and soccer as well. So those are my thoughts for the week here. Before I let everybody go, I want to make sure everybody stay safe, mask up, be all right going forward. We'll see what happens going forward this week. Okay, now everybody, I'm gonna sign it off here. This week on the pod here, we got a lot to keep an eye on. Obviously, going forward here, we're gonna look at league meet possibilities in the next few weeks. So we'll see what happens going forward. Okay, now everybody, I'm gonna sign off here. Take care, everybody, and see you all next week, everybody. Take care. See you later. God bless.